Crisp, refreshing, and unmistakably tasty. Ice cold Coke Zero Sugar. It's the only drink with real Coca-Cola taste and zero sugar.
Do you have a dark curiosity? Heart Starts Pounding, Horrors, Hauntings, and Mysteries is a weekly podcast hosted by me, Kaylin Moore. Each week, I'll take you on a dark journey through terrifying true urban legends, bizarre true crime cases, chilling tales of backwoods horror, and more. So if you're looking to join a passionate community of the darkly curious, check out Heart Starts Pounding on the free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. And remember, stay curious.
Hello, and welcome back to In Cold Pursuit, a disturbed true horror production. Here we'll tell you the stories of those long forgotten, whose sudden demise are as tragic as they are intriguing. You'll learn about previously unsolved cases, whose perpetrators went unknown for decades. I'm your host, Doug Bailey, and this is In Cold Pursuit. This episode contains graphic content. Listener discretion is advised. On August 14th, 2018, a 911 call was placed in San Francisco, and at first, it didn't seem like there was an actual emergency to report. At best, it was a mildly concerning circumstance. Residents on Clara Street had noticed that a truck for a private crime scene cleanup company was parked outside one of their neighbors' homes. There was also a slightly suspicious man lurking nearby. On its own, neither of these things seemed to warrant an emergency response. They might merit a call to the nearest police station with a request that they come check the situation out. But the locals had already tried calling the police in the weeks leading up to August 14th. They'd seen some strange men hanging around lately, but mostly they were concerned with what they hadn't seen, namely one of their neighbors. But numerous calls to the cops hadn't done any good. Now, with the appearance of this cleaning truck, they were insistent. Something was very, very wrong at number 228 Clara Street. No one was quite sure exactly when the problem arose, but the last time anyone had seen Brian Egg was in late May or early June of that year. The 65-year-old man had lived in his white house in the city's south of Market District for decades. He bought the place in 1976, so he was a familiar face to plenty of the people in the neighborhood. Still, Brian was something of an enigma to people. He'd once worked at a local bar, The Stud, but hadn't seemed to work for years. Some people thought he must have lived off an inheritance. Still, everyone knew that Brian was kind and generous. He was known to sometimes take in young, unhoused men looking for a place to stay. He had separate living quarters on the ground floor of his home, which he sometimes offered up to people in need. He would usually meet these men at St. Anthony's Church, where he ate lunch almost every day. Otherwise, Brian was a companionable neighbor who took the time to make sure the street and sidewalk outside his house were clean and watered the trees by the roadside. Sometime in July, people realized that they hadn't noticed Brian doing any of these things lately. Around the same time, Brian's older brother Devin tried to call from his home in Florida, but Brian didn't pick up. Instead, Devin got an answering machine with an outgoing message reporting that Brian was away until August 12th. That was strange for two reasons. The first was that Brian Egg had never owned an answering machine before. The second was that the voice on the machine wasn't Brian's. Devin called back another day, and this time someone answered. The guy called himself Nate and said that Brian was just taking his dog for a walk around the block, and he would call his brother back when he had returned. Devin never got that call. Just as Devin was wondering exactly what was going on with his brother, his neighbors were starting to ask the same questions. One of them had even called the San Francisco PD to request a welfare check on the property. Scott Free had lived with Brian for a couple of months about 20 years earlier when he was between houses. Since then, the two had been friendly neighbors. Then, over the summer of 2018, Scott realized he hadn't seen his friend for a while, and there were at least 2 men he didn't recognize who seemed to be living at number 228. After Scott requested that the SFPD check it out, they called him back on or around August 1st to say that an officer had spoken with someone living at the property, and they had told him Brian was working on an art project in Truckee, a town almost 200 miles northwest of San Francisco. To Scott, that didn't sound like Brian. He turned to the social media service Nextdoor. On August 2nd, he posted a description of Brian and asked people to keep an eye out for him. It turned out Scott wasn't alone in his concern. Other neighbors chimed in and gave accounts of their interactions with the police. According to Clara Street residents, the police considered the situation dealt with. One of the neighbors reported that the police hung up on her when she called to follow up. Still, Brian's neighbors weren't giving up that easily. Several residents agreed to continue calling the police, while others went to the house themselves to try and speak to whoever was living there. But all they were told was that Brian wasn't home, or he was traveling in Europe for the summer. But no one who knew Brian believed he would go on any kind of trip without telling people about it.
A well-built wardrobe is about pieces that work together and hold up over time. That's what Quince does best. Premium materials, thoughtful design, and everyday staples that feel easy to wear and easy to rely on, even as the weather shifts. And for me, Quince has become one of those brands I keep coming back to because it just works. I've got their joggers in heavy rotation, my bed sheets from Quince have legitimately changed the quality of my sleep, and my Flowknit Performance Zip Hoodie is one of those grab-it-without-thinking staples that's always comfortable and always looks good. Quince has the everyday essentials I love with quality that lasts. Organic cotton sweaters, polos for every occasion, lighter jackets that keep you warm in the changing seasons, the list goes on. And they cut out the middlemen so you're not paying for the brand markup, just quality that holds up to daily wear. Refresh your wardrobe with Quince. Go to quince.com/disturbed for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/disturbed. Free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/disturbed. Every group has someone who insists on doing things the hard way. That friend still paying for a subscription they forgot they had, the one refusing to update their phone because it still works. I used to be that person too, especially when it came to overpaying for wireless. Then I switched to Mint Mobile, and I'm so glad I did. Because here's the thing. Mint gives you the premium wireless you expect, unlimited talk, text, and data, but without the inflated price tag. Same coverage, same speed, just way less money disappearing into the void every month. And recently, we actually added another phone to our plan. So if the kids are home alone, they've got a direct line to mom and dad. It's peace of mind without paying big wireless panic prices. Ready to stop paying for more than you have to? New customers can make the switch today and for a limited time, get unlimited premium wireless for just $15 per month. Switch now at mintmobile.com/disturbed. That's mintmobile.com/disturbed. Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Over 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. Capable device required. Availability, speed, and coverage varies. Additional terms apply. See mintmobile.com.
As the days dragged on, things only seemed to get worse. As far as locals could tell, there were 2 strange men squatting in Brian's house by this stage. And at least one person had noticed someone using bleach to clean the front of the building soon after a police visit. On August 7th, Brian's sister filed a missing persons report over the phone. That spurred the police to pay a visit to Clara Street again. But when no one answered the door, they simply left. Instead, they placed a call to the house and heard the same outgoing message that Devon heard earlier in the summer. Brian was away until August 12th. Accepting the message as legitimate, they seemingly moved on to other matters. But just 1 week later, Brian's neighbors noticed a big white truck pull up outside number 228. On the side was the logo for Aftermath, a private crime scene cleaning service. Eavesdropping, a couple of different people heard one of the squatters offering to pay at least $1,000 in cash for the company to scrub the house from top to bottom. That's when someone made a 911 call with a plea for police to get to the address as soon as possible before whatever had happened in that house was washed away for good. Officers soon arrived at the property to speak with the Aftermath cleaners. After confirming that the men living in the home offered to pay them cash for the job, the police called a halt to everything and cordoned off the house from the public. They apprehended the man who'd hired the cleaners and then entered the building to perform another welfare check. The initial sweep didn't reveal Brian's whereabouts, but police saw cleaning supplies and smelled suspicious odors. Something was going on. To perform a thorough search, they needed a warrant. While the application was made, officers formally arrested Robert McCaffrey, the 52-year-old who'd been staying in Brian's home for months and who'd been supervising the cleaners when the cops arrived. 2 days later, on the 16th, they picked up Lance Silva, McCaffrey's suspected accomplice. The 39-year-old was found outside a residential hotel, not far from Clara Street. Meanwhile, investigators executed the search warrant at Brian's house, spending days picking through decades' worth of life. Given the clear evidence that McCaffrey and Silva had been trying to cover something up inside the home, cadaver dogs were brought in to assist with the search. The dogs alerted inside the building, letting their handlers know that there were human remains nearby, but no one could figure out where they might be. There were spots of what looked like blood on some furniture in the building, and in the backyard was a sheet that was discolored with some kind of brown substance and aged pupa, possible indicators that it had once held something bleeding. Then, on August 17th, 3 days into the search, police noticed something they hadn't spotted before: a door. Later reports differed on why the door was overlooked. Some suggested that there were boxes piled high in front of it. Other accounts had the door concealed behind a large picture frame. Whatever the case, officers had found it now, and what they found inside the small room beyond was the stuff of nightmares. It was a large fish tank containing a badly decomposed human torso, missing both hands and a head. It was submerged in household chemicals and weighed down by an iron sawhorse, a rolled-up carpet, and empty bottles of Drano. When the contents of the tank were removed, a pair of feet still inside their socks was revealed at the bottom. Just one more horrific discovery for the crime scene investigators. Investigators immediately suspected that they had found the missing Brian Egg and requested DNA samples from his family members to confirm the identity of the remains. But it would be difficult. The body was so badly degraded that even identifying individual organs was a challenge. News of the grisly discovery shocked San Francisco and frustrated residents of Clara Street, who'd been sounding the alarm for weeks. Police defended their actions, though, telling the public that there wasn't anything to suggest that Brian was in danger. But just a little digging into his financial records told a different story. Despite no one seeing Brian since early that summer, someone had been accessing his bank accounts for months. On June 1st, a man calling himself Brian Egg had purchased a second-hand BMW from a dealership in Newark, California, about 30 miles away from Clara Street. When police showed the salesman some photographs, he pointed out the man who'd made the purchase. It wasn't 65-year-old Brian Egg at all. It was 39-year-old Lance Silva, who had prior convictions for grand theft. It seemed that Silva had also used Brian's debit card to book the crime scene cleanup crew. Both Silva and Robert McCaffrey were charged with homicide, ID theft, elder abuse, and financial crimes. But the San Francisco District Attorney's Office requested that the charges be dropped until they could gather more evidence against the men, including the identity of the remains. McCaffrey was immediately released, while Silva was held in custody because of a parole violation. Police continued their investigation into the crime as the full extent of the identity theft was revealed. Devin reported that his brother's bank account was drained of some $70,000 in the months since he had disappeared. The bank returned the missing funds, acknowledging the fraud, but after that, there were few updates to the case. On September 11th, Brian's friends and family came together to hold a candlelight memorial for him. It would have been his 66th birthday. 2 weeks later, officials confirmed that the remains from the fish tank were in fact Brian. Still, no one was charged with the murder. Silva served his sentence for parole violation and was eventually released without fanfare or further charges. In May of 2019, 9 months after the 911 call that finally got police to enter Brian's house, the medical examiner officially ruled the death a homicide. Given the state of the remains, pinpointing the exact cause of death was almost impossible, but the ME declared it was the result of unspecific homicidal violence with blunt trauma. To some, it felt obvious that there had been a murder, but ruling out the possibility that Brian died of an accidental overdose or natural causes was an important step in the investigation. It strongly suggested that whoever put him in that tank was covering up an intentional, violent crime. With that announcement, many expected that charges would finally be brought against the two men who had used Brian's accounts for months and allegedly tried to cover up his murder. But there was nothing. A full year after the discovery of Brian's body, the district attorney's office said it would only move forward with charges once SFPD presented them with a completed case. SFPD simply said that their investigation was ongoing and that they were following promising leads. But to the people who knew Brian Egg, his family, his friends, his neighbors, it seemed like his killers had gotten away with murder, and those left behind just had to pick up the pieces and move on. On Clara Street, Scott Free took over Brian's unofficial role of street cleaner, picking up trash and watering the plants his friend had once tended with care. To this date, no further arrests have been made in the case. Remarking on a lack of progress in the case, Scott said, "The silence has been deafening." To some, the glacial pace of the investigation may suggest a careful, methodical search for evidence, one that leaves no stone unturned in the quest for justice. To others, the lack of updates indicates that the quest is over, that by the time the police acted, it was already too late, and the evidence they needed for a conviction was gone. There is still hope, but with every passing year, that hope dwindles just a little bit more. Unless new information is brought to light, it seems there will be no justice for Brian Egg, a man whose neighbors didn't know him well, but who is remembered for his kind and generous heart. Hello, and welcome back to In Cold Pursuit, a Disturbed true horror production. Here we'll tell you the stories of those long forgotten, whose sudden demise are as tragic as they are intriguing. You'll learn about cold cases lost from the collective memory, tragedies that have simmered for decades, their pain still lingering. I'm your host, Doug Bailey, and this is In Cold Pursuit. Listener discretion is advised. I want you to think about your commute. Do you drive? How far? Do you have to get out and walk? Maybe a few blocks? Or is it complicated, involving multiple modes of transport and a carefully aligned schedule? Now, with that whole journey in your mind, think about all the points where something could go wrong. Then think about how lucky you are to make it home every day, because not everybody does. On August 29th, 2002, Audrey Mae Herron wrapped up her shift at the Columbia Green Long-Term Healthcare Facility in Catskill, New York. The 31-year-old mother of 3 worked at the care home as a part-time nurse. The job suited Audrey, who was a kind, generous sort of person. Her hair was light brown, almost blonde, and her cheeks were rosy like a cartoon princess. When she clocked out at the end of her long night, Audrey walked out into the Columbia Green parking lot with a few of her other staff members and made a beeline for her black 1994 Jeep Grand Cherokee. The colleagues who saw her last remembered she was wearing dark green medical scrubs and a blue turtleneck. The watch on her wrist had a white leather strap, and the gold pendant around her neck told the world she was #1 mom. It was just after 11 when Audrey put the keys into the ignition and started the car. She was looking forward to getting home. Her eldest daughter, 10-year-old Sansia, had just arrived home from a vacation with her grandmother in Florida. They'd been away for over a month, and mother and daughter were eager to see each other. Audrey's own mom, Shirley, was excited to be home too. She adored Audrey, who never let Shirley forget how much she loved her. She'd buy small trinkets for her, like plaques that said, "Mom, I love you so much." Audrey had spoken to Sansia and Shirley earlier that day when they were still driving north. Sansia was spending one final night with her grandmother, and then Audrey would pick her up after a doctor's appointment the next morning. It was still summer, but multiple reports about the night of August 29th state that the weather was bad. Some accounts mention rain, others mention fog. Still, Audrey didn't have a long journey home. It was about 15 miles to her house in Freehold. At that time of night, there shouldn't have been any traffic, so the drive should have taken 20 minutes at most. Maybe a little more if Audrey drove slower in the rain and fog. Grainy security footage from a convenience store shows what seems to be Audrey's car leaving the nursing home parking lot and turning left, sending her west on County Route 23B, the road to bring her home. But Audrey Mae Herron never arrived. Around 6 a.m. the next morning, Shirley was woken up by her telephone. It was Audrey's husband, Jeff. He wanted to know if Audrey had stayed at her house the night before. It was something that happened occasionally, but Audrey would usually let Jeff know her plans ahead of time. Shirley, still half asleep, didn't think much of the question. She told Jeff that Audrey wasn't there and put her head back on the pillow. She'd had a long drive yesterday, but an hour later, the phone rang again. It was Jeff. He couldn't find Audrey, he said, and he was very worried. Now realizing the seriousness of the situation, Shirley woke her granddaughter and they rushed over to meet Jeff. A family member who used to work in law enforcement made some calls and reported Audrey missing. It had only been a few hours, But that inside connection might have been what got police to start investigating right away. At least one New York State police officer came to the Heron house that day to gather statements from Jeff and Shirley. They talked about the last time they'd each spoken to Audrey, where she had been the night before, and what her plans were following that. They both said the same thing. It wasn't like Audrey to disappear like this. She loved her family and wouldn't want them to worry about her. In short order, the police organized a large-scale search of the area. They were sure that Audrey had been on her way home from work, which left a relatively small area where she could have vanished. If she'd broken down or had some kind of accident, her large, black car would be easy to spot. But it was no good. The search radius was 9 miles. New York State Police searched every parking lot and every road in town, and Audrey's Jeep was nowhere to be found. And they weren't just looking for the car itself. They were also on the lookout for signs of trouble, skid marks on the road, broken guardrails, or damage to brush by the roadside. Helicopters were deployed to search by air, and ATVs were sent out to get a closer look at the more difficult terrain up close. Still, there was nothing. After a number of days, the searchers doubled back to check bodies of water in the area for signs a car had entered at some point. Dog teams were sent into the field, hopeful they could catch the scent of Audrey. Investigators went door to door within the search area, asking people if they'd spotted Audrey or her car on the night she disappeared. But it was all for naught. What was so baffling about Audrey's disappearance wasn't just that she had vanished. It was that there was no sign of her car either. A Jeep Grand Cherokee was a large vehicle. If Audrey had crashed, it stood to reason that there would be a sign of that somewhere on the road. If she had been the victim of foul play, then surely her car would have turned up abandoned. But the car, like its owner, had disappeared without a trace, as had Audrey's cell phone. The authorities tried to trace the device but got no response. That meant that the battery had died, the phone was switched off, or it had been destroyed, none of which boded well for Audrey. As the search continued without success, locals held candlelit vigils and papered nearby towns with flyers. Audrey's relatives were questioned again and again, the police desperate to wring from them any small clue that might help. But days turned into weeks, which soon became months, and eventually years, all without any sign of Audrey. In that time, 2 main theories about the case emerged. The first was that poor weather conditions had led to an accident, and that the car had ended up somewhere it couldn't be seen, like beneath thick undergrowth or underwater. The second theory was that foul play was involved. Exactly what that would have looked like, no one knows, but perhaps Audrey was flagged down by a person standing on the side of the road. Always happy to help, she might have pulled over to ask if they needed anything, perhaps inviting the wrong person into her car. But both of those theories have always been just that, theories, with no real evidence or leads to back them up. Still, Audrey's friends and family have never given up hope. They've continued holding vigils over the years. Early on, some of Audrey's patients would attend. They'd make a point of finding her family to tell them what a wonderful nurse she was, how much she cared for them. As she grew up, Audrey's eldest daughter, Sansia, took inspiration from that. She followed in her mother's footsteps and became a nurse herself. In September of 2022, Sansia got married. She made sure to set aside a seat for her mother and carried a small photograph of Audrey attached to her bouquet. It had been 20 years, but she still wanted her mother there on her wedding day. That same year, it seemed like there might finally be progress in the case. Investigators reportedly received new information that led to the State Police Underwater Recovery Team searching Marers Lake, the Potluck Reservoir, and part of Catskill Creek. Whether they were searching for Audrey, her car, or both was unclear, but the efforts were in vain. Nothing was found. Months later, a civilian dive team called Adventures with Purpose joined the search. The group performed searches for missing persons in bodies of water free of charge. They visited several locations in Greene County and Albany County with no success. If Audrey Herron had disappeared today, there's a good chance she would have been found. Technology has evolved so much in the last 2 decades. There are more security cameras, more and better ways of tracking devices, even cars themselves. Investigators would literally be better equipped to track Audrey down, whatever happened to her. But that's not the way it happened. So for more than 2 decades, investigators and Audrey's loved ones have been stuck asking the same questions and searching that same stretch of road. The hope is that the car will be found at last, and it will offer the answers they seek, or that someone will come forward with crucial information that unlocks the mystery. It's entirely possible that person is you. As a reminder, Audrey vanished after leaving work in Catskill, New York on August 29, 2002. She was wearing dark green medical scrubs and a blue turtleneck. She was 5 feet tall with hazel eyes and light brown, almost blonde hair. She was driving a black 1994 Jeep Grand Cherokee with New York license plate X233UV. New York State Police are ready for your call. And if Audrey happens to be out there listening, know that you're missed and that your family is waiting for you to come home. Thank you for joining us for another episode of In Cold Pursuit, a production of the Disturbed True Horror team at Killer Podcasts. I'm your host, Doug Bailey. This episode was written by Joel Callan. Our producer and editor is Declan Roars, and our audio engineer is Nathan Corson. Listen to our episodes early and ad-free at patreon.com/disturbedpodcast. And hey, stay safe out there.